AITA for walking out of my daughter's wedding after she called me her starter dad? I used to think that love meant sacrifice, that if I worked hard enough, stayed out of trouble, and always came home with a steady paycheck, somehow that would translate into being a good father. I was not the kind of man to make big speeches or write birthday cards with elaborate words. I gave what I knew how to give, stability. While my friends were buying boats and spending weekends at the lake, I was working overtime, saving every extra dollar for braces, tuition, or whatever came next. I never saw myself as a hero, just constant and present, the kind of man who did not flinch when the bills arrived or when the water heater broke down. My name was not on plaques or trophies, but on the mortgage, the electric bill, and the emergency contact forms at school. That was enough for me, or at least I thought so. My daughter, Hannah, was everything to me from the moment I first held her. She had a mass of dark curls and curious eyes that never stopped scanning the room. Even as a baby, she looked like she was already disappointed with the world. It made me laugh. As she grew up, I watched her become a bright, witty little girl with strong opinions who at 10 could already out-talk me and at 12 could contradict and beat me in an argument. She was never cruel, but she had a sharp tongue, a kind of sophistication that made people listen when she spoke. I smiled with pride when parents told me how articulate and confident she was. I did not always understand her world. She moved through it with an ease I never had. But I was proud knowing I had given her the foundation to live in it fearlessly. If I had to be the one sweating through double shifts while she chased dreams I could not even pronounce, so be it. That is what fathers do. The truth is, I did not always feel seen in my own home. My wife Laura was the expressive one, the planner, the communicator. She was the one who took Hannah to buy dresses, who knew her teachers' names, who had long conversations about friend drama over a cup of coffee. Me, I was just there fixing things, taking Hannah to dance rehearsal when Laura had migraines, quietly paying her college dorm bill before she even realized there was a problem. I did not mind being in the background. I had lived almost all my life like that. What mattered was that my daughter had everything she needed and felt safe. I naively assumed that love would be understood with time, that one day, maybe after I was gone, she would look back and realize that all those boring, thankless things I had done were acts of love in disguise. I guess I was wrong. In the days leading up to the wedding, I felt a strange mix of emotions: pride, anxiety, exhaustion. Weddings are expensive, especially when you try to make everything perfect. Hannah and her soon-to-be husband Matthew wanted a ceremony on the California coast. Sunset vows, cocktails facing the sea, that whole Pinterest-fueled dream. I told Laura, let them have it. It is their day. Even if the budget exploded, even if I had to dip into the emergency fund I had sworn not to touch, I did it gladly. I wanted to give her something that would last. So, I handed her the keys to our beach house. It was not extravagant, but it had been in my family for 2 generations. It was the only place where I allowed myself to dream. I thought it would be perfect for their honeymoon, maybe even for their future kids one day. When I gave it to her at the rehearsal dinner, she hugged me tightly and whispered, "Thank you, Dad. You always keep your word." That sentence meant the world to me. The night before the wedding, I stayed up late drinking cheap whiskey and thinking about the speech I might give. I am not a public speaker, but I thought I would try. I wanted to tell her how proud I was, that I hoped she would feel loved every day of her life. But in the end, I did not say much. I smiled a lot. I danced with her to the father-daughter song and tried not to cry when she rested her head on my shoulder. "Are you okay?" she asked me. I nodded. "Just pride," I said, and I was. My God, I was so proud to have her in that dress, laughing with her friends, radiating youth and excitement. It made all those hard years worth living. I thought I had finally done something right, but now looking back, I wonder if all that pride had blinded me. If I had paid more attention, I might have seen the signs that she did not see me the way I saw myself, that she might have loved me, but she never respected me, that her image of me was formed more by what I was not than by what I was, and maybe, just maybe, Laura had been doing quiet damage all along, nodding when Hannah complained about our old sedan or our tight budget, downplaying my efforts as if they were the bare minimum. The night before her wedding, Hannah kissed me on the cheek and said, "You are the best dad." But the next day, microphone in hand and everyone watching, she broke something that I believe I can never fix. The reception was held in a glass-enclosed room overlooking the beach, the kind of place that seems straight out of a movie. Zigzagging lights hung above our heads. The sun was beginning to dip into the water, and everything felt bathed in gold. People were laughing, music was playing, and for a moment, I let myself relax. I watched Hannah glide across the dance floor with her new husband, her white dress trailing like sea foam. I felt a quiet joy, as if I had reached the peak of something, as if all those years of working late, coming home aching, and holding my breath during bank transfers had led to this moment. I took a sip of my ginger ale and absorbed it all. My daughter was married. She looked happy. That should have been enough. The plates were cleared. The champagne was poured, and the DJ turned down the music. When Hannah took the microphone, I remember the sound of the wind outside, the murmur of voices quieting down, the way people turned their chairs to look at her. I leaned forward, ready to catch every word. Her eyes scanned the room, stopping briefly on me. She smiled, I smiled back. I just want to thank everyone for being here today, her strong, confident voice began. It means a lot to us to be surrounded by so many people who care. People applauded, I did too, folding my napkin on my knee as if it mattered. I was already a bit emotional, overwhelmed by the feeling of the moment. Then she looked at Matthew, her new husband, and said, I always dreamed of marrying a hard-working man, who puts family first and who is present, not just physically, but emotionally. Someone who truly cares. Her voice shifted slightly. I am so grateful to have found you, Matthew, because growing up, let's just say, I did not always know what that looked like. There was a pause, a moment so quick I almost missed it. And then she added with a little laugh, not like the poor guy I grew up with. It hit like a punch I had not prepared for. The room erupted in laughter, genuine, loud, approving. Some people even clapped. My wife, Laura, smiled and shook her head as if it were a tender little joke. My heart did not just sink. It collapsed, as if it knew better than I did that something was ending right there in that instant. I looked around, hoping someone would meet my gaze, that they would see what I was feeling, that they would feel something similar to what I felt. But no one did. They were too busy laughing, and Hannah did not even flinch. She simply kept talking. She kept smiling as if she had not just hurt me in front of every person who had ever mattered in our lives. I sat perfectly still, too stunned to move, my hands clenched tightly under the table. I listened to the rest of her speech in fragments, something about love, about new beginnings, about building a future. But it all sounded distant, like an echo underwater. I felt smaller than I had ever been. I had been her punching bag, and everyone had celebrated it. I caught Laura's eye across the table. She gave me a slightly apologetic look, but not enough to stop smiling. As if to say, do not take it personally. But how was I supposed to take it? I waited for her to finish. I waited for the applause to die down, for the music to start again, for people to go back to dancing and drinking and forgetting. And then, as quietly as possible, I stood up. I did not make a scene. I did not slam my chair. I did not break a glass. I just grabbed my coat, nodded once to no one in particular, and walked out the side door. The ocean breeze hit me like a cold slap. Sharp honest. I walked along the beach, my shoes sinking into the sand until I could no longer hear the music. Only the waves, only my breathing, only the sound of something breaking inside me over and over again. When I got back to my car, I sat in the driver's seat for a long time. I did not cry. I did not yell. I just stared through the windshield at the darkening horizon, replaying the moment over and over in my mind. Not like the poor guy I grew up with. I thought about every school lunch I had packed, every bill I had paid late just to make sure she had what she needed. I thought about the time she wanted to join the gymnastics team, and we could not afford it. So, I sold my tools and took weekend shifts at the hardware store just to do my best. I thought about the beach house. The deed was already in her name. I had signed the papers myself, and now I did not even feel like her father anymore. I felt like a living warning. I do not know at what point the anger appeared, maybe somewhere on that long walk back to the parking lot. But when it arrived, it was not burning or loud. It was cold, clear, focused. I opened the real estate portal on my phone. I logged into the smart lock system of the beach house. I sent a message to the property manager. In less than 20 minutes, I had changed the locks, canceled their honeymoon flight, and revoked every reservation I had made for them. I did not do it to hurt her. I did it to take something back, to say stop. Because if she could stand there and humiliate me in front of the world, then she did not deserve a single thing I had built, not a single grain of sand from that beach house. I drove home in silence, parking just as the moon was rising above our porch. Laura was already there. She must have left the reception shortly after me. She was standing on the front steps, arms crossed, a mix of confusion and irritation on her face. "You just left?" she asked. I did not answer. I walked past her and went into the house, sitting down at the kitchen table as I had done thousands of nights before. She followed me inside, her voice growing louder. "What is wrong with you?" I looked her straight in the eye and said, "I took back the beach house and canceled the honeymoon." "What did you do?" "She made her choice," I said. "She chose to make fun of me in front of everyone. That was her gift to me at her wedding. I am just returning the favor." Laura looked at me as if I had spoken another language. Her jaw dropped slightly, but no words came out at first. Then, with a laugh of disbelief, she walked across the kitchen and leaned against the counter as if she needed support. "You are being ridiculous," she said. "Come on, you are overreacting." It was a joke. A bad one maybe, but a joke nonetheless. She put a particular weight on the word joke, as if that should lessen the damage, as if it could rewind the laughter and erase the humiliation. I stayed there, motionless as a stone, watching her try to cover up what our daughter had completely destroyed. My wife, the one who knew what that beach house meant to me, who had seen with her own eyes what I sacrificed to keep it, was defending the insult, not me. And that, more than anything, ignited something cold and permanent in me. I stood up slowly, walked to the cupboard, and poured myself a glass of water just to steady myself. "It was not a joke," I said, turning toward her. "It was the truth, her truth. At least the way she sees it. And you laughed with her." My voice was calm, maybe too calm. "You did not flinch, you did not look at me, you did not even take my hand. You clapped, Laura." She rolled her eyes as if I were exaggerating on purpose. "Do not do this," she said. "Do not turn a comment into a grand betrayal." I looked at her in silence for a long moment, then let out a short, bitter laugh that did not sound like my own. "It is not a comment," I said. "It is years of this, years of her turning me into a joke and you allowing it." She pushed off the counter and crossed her arms. Her tone became sharper. "So what? You are going to disinherit her just because your ego was bruised." That hit me harder than it should have. I took a step toward her. Not aggressive, just enough to make sure she heard me clearly. "No," I said. "It is not because my ego was bruised. It is because she took everything I ever gave her and used it as material for a speech. Because she humiliated me in front of everyone I ever respected, and because the two people I thought would never do that to me, you and her, did not even flinch when it happened." Laura shook her head, rubbing her temples as if I were giving her a migraine. "You are destroying our family over a few bad words." That was the moment I realized we were not even on the same page. I was not destroying anything. I was just walking away from a fire that had already consumed the walls. I did not raise my voice. I did not throw anything. I just said, "I am tired, Laura. I have been tired for years. Tired of giving and hearing that it is not enough. Tired of being invisible until someone needs something." I gave her my heart, my time, my savings, and she stood on that stage and reduced me to a joke. For a few seconds, the house remained silent. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator, the distant crash of the ocean waves a few blocks away. Laura softened her expression a bit, reaching out to touch my arm. "She will apologize," she said softly. "She already texted you. She feels terrible." I pulled my arm away, not roughly, just enough to send a message. "It is not just that she hurt me, Laura. She exposed what she really thinks of me, that I was never enough. That love only counts if it comes with a 6-figure salary and a country club membership." I paused. My voice trembled for the first time. I broke my back so she would never be ashamed of where she came from, and yet she was. Laura had no answer to that. She stood there, her arms falling to her sides like someone who had just realized the house had been collapsing all along. I turned around and walked down the hallway, picking up the manila folder that still held a copy of the deed to the beach house. I set it on the counter and pushed it toward her. I transferred it back to my name. I said, "It is mine again. She can find her caring husband and start from scratch, but she will not do it on my legacy." I waited for her to say something, anything to make me doubt. but all she did was blink at the folder as if it might bite her if she touched it. The next morning, I turned off my phone. Hannah had called 5 times during the night. She had left 3 voicemails that started out angry. Then they became tearful and finally quiet and broken. I did not listen to the last one. I did not trust myself to do it. Instead, I opened the front door. I sat on the porch with my coffee and watched the sun rise alone. For the first time in a long time, the silence did not feel lonely. It felt like a clean slate and a new beginning. Later that day, I drove down to the beach house. The locks had already been changed, but I still checked every door and window, making sure it was mine. Again, I breathed in the familiar scent of old pine floors and the ocean air. It had always been my escape, my only indulgence, and now it was whole again, untouched by her sense of entitlement. I stood in the living room looking out at the ocean, remembering the first time I had brought Hannah there when she was just a little girl. She had played in the sand for hours, laughing as if the world could not hurt her. Back then, I believed that if I gave her enough love, she would never turn cold, that if I stayed solid and present, she would never resent me. That belief was gone. The first time Hannah came back to the house after the wedding, she did not knock on the door. I heard the sound of her car on the gravel driveway before I even looked away from my coffee. I was sitting on the porch of the beach house, watching the tide come in, trying to make peace with the silence that had followed the fallout. I knew she would show up eventually. I assumed it would be her, not Laura. My wife had gone quiet at home. She continued the routines, continued cooking, continued going to bed next to me at night. But there was a wall between us now. Invisible, but solid. Neither of us dared to touch it. Hannah walked up the steps slowly, hesitating at the top as if she was not sure she was welcome. She looked smaller than I remembered. I guess that had more to do with the way I saw her now. She was wearing one of those oversized sweaters that used to hang over the back of her chair in high school. No makeup, puffy eyes, a woman undone by something she did not expect to last so long. I did not say anything when she approached. I just kept sipping my coffee, letting the weight of the moment settle between us like a third person. "Dad," she said in a broken voice. "Can we talk?" I looked at her for a long time. I could have said no. I could have told her to talk about it with her caring husband or to send me a letter, but a part of me wanted to hear what she had to say. So, I nodded once and pointed to the chair next to me. She sat down, clasped her hands in her lap, and looked at the ocean as if she could find the words there that she could not manage to say. "I ruined everything," she said after a moment. What I said came out wrong. I was nervous and I did not think. I did not. I interrupted her, calmly but firmly. "You said exactly what you meant to say. The words were yours. No one forced you to say them. You were not drunk. You were not improvising. It was your truth. Do not insult both of us by pretending it was not." She flinched. I saw it. Her fingers curled into fists on her lap. "I did not mean to hurt you," she murmured. I turned my head toward her. "But you did, and not just with the words, with the laughter, with the way you looked so proud of yourself afterward, as if you had finally put your old man in his place." I shook my head slowly, speaking in a low voice. "You did not hurt me by making a joke. You hurt me because you showed the world how little you value everything I sacrificed for you." Her eyes filled with tears. But I did not move. I had spent too many years being the soft landing spot. This time, I needed to be the wall that could not be climbed. She reached out toward my arm, and I pulled away. Not in anger, but to protect myself. "I was angry," she said, tears falling. "Now I do not even know why. I think I always felt like I did not have what the other kids had, like we were always just surviving. And that made me feel ashamed. And I guess I blamed you for that, even though I should not have. That is the closest thing to honesty in 20 years, I told her. And even that is not enough." She looked at me, stunned, as if no version of this moment could have ended in anything other than forgiveness, as if she believed her tears were magic. But I was not the same father I had been the week before. That man would have bent until he broke. I was not bending anymore. We sat in silence for a long time after that. The waves crashed, the seagulls cried overhead, and I let the wind speak for me. Finally, she stood up, wiping her face. "So, that is it," she asked. "You are going to cut me off or pretend I do not exist?" I looked her in the eye. "You already did that, Hannah. You did it the moment you decided that mocking me would be a better toast than honoring me. You made me invisible in front of everyone I ever tried to impress. And now, You want to be seen. It does not work that way. She turned around and walked down the steps without another word. Her car backed out of the driveway slowly, as if even the engine was hesitating on which direction to take. I did not watch her leave. I stared at the water, letting it wash away the weight of what had just happened between us. That night, Laura and I talked again. She had heard from Hannah, of course. She had gotten the call between sobs. The story of how Dad will not even look at me. Laura was in the living room, arms crossed, disappointment painted on her face as if it were mine to carry. You are punishing her, she said. You are punishing me. Why? Because I am not perfect, because I did not react fast enough. No, I replied, exhausted. I am finally reacting. That is the difference. You cannot erase it. She is our daughter. She erased me first. I said. And you? You helped her hold the eraser. The room went silent after that. I left her standing there and went out to the garage. I sat among my old tools, the same ones I had once sold to pay for ballet slippers, tutoring, and soccer uniforms. I used to believe that being a father meant sacrifice. Now I knew it also required respect. And if they could not give me that, then I did not owe them the rest of me. The first time someone outside the family commented on the subject, I was in line at the hardware store picking up supplies for the beach house. A woman behind me, nice, I think her name was, touched my shoulder with a hesitant smile. I saw the pictures from Hannah's wedding, she said. Everything looked so beautiful. I nodded politely, already turning back to the counter, but she did not stop there. She gave a whole speech. You must have been proud. I stopped, my hand frozen on my wallet. There it was. Someone who thought they were making small talk without realizing she had just pressed down on a fresh bruise. I did not answer. I just paid for my things and walked out, the bag rustling like static in my hand. I could feel her watching me leave. That was the beginning. The news had spread, as it always does in small towns where gossip travels in the passenger seat of every morning coffee run. At first, people did not say much to my face, but I saw the looks. Pity, confusion, judgment. One neighbor, Kevin, made a sarcastic comment about how I had probably written Hannah out of my will. Another, a younger guy I barely knew from the gym, cornered me outside the post office and said, "Man, if my daughter gave me a beach house, I would let her make fun of me on stage too." He laughed as if it were witty. I did not laugh. I did not expect strangers to understand. What hurt the most were the people I thought would understand. My brother called from Phoenix after seeing the video of Hannah's wedding that had gone viral. It was not that big of a deal, he said. You need a thicker skin. I did not bother to explain to him that it was not the words. It was what it revealed. You cannot unsee the truth once someone finally says it out loud. By then, Laura had moved into the guest room. She said it was temporary, but we both knew it was not just a sleeping arrangement. We passed each other in the kitchen like co-workers who had just gone through a bad merger, cordial, polite, and completely disconnected. She still brought up Hannah during dinner, as if naming her could warm the air between us. I let her talk, but I did not participate. I had made peace with the silence. I had made peace with being the villain in a story they had written without me. Then came the post. I never saw it directly. Someone at work showed it to me. Hannah had written a long caption under one of her wedding photos. The picture showed her and Matthew kissing on the beach, bathed in the sunset light. The caption started innocently. The happiest day of my life, and eternally grateful. But in the second paragraph, it took a turn. I have learned that not everyone is there for you in the way you expect. Some people let their pride speak louder than their love. I have tried to make peace, but some parents choose silence over reconciliation. I hope one day he remembers who he raised me to be. She did not name me. She did not need to. The comments section filled with sympathy. You are so strong. He will regret it one day. Sorry you were hurt. Only a handful of people questioned it. One woman I did not even know wrote, "But did not you make a joke at his expense in front of everyone?" Her comment was quickly buried under a sea of replies, calling her toxic, negative, jealous. That is when I understood. In her version of the story, I had abandoned her for being honest. In mine, I had simply stopped funding the narrative that painted me as disposable. For a moment, I felt the urge to reply, to post my side of the story, to write down every forgotten birthday where I showed up anyway, every late bill I had paid on her behalf. Every time I had sat in the bleachers watching her dance, cheer, speak, and shine while I faded into the background as part of the tech crew. But I did not. I was not going to fight her for the leading role. Let her keep the sympathy. Let her keep the stage. I did something else instead. I called my niece Samantha. She is 24, freshly graduated in nursing, still sending handwritten thank you cards, even when she borrows money from me. She lives with her mom in a tiny apartment 2 hours inland. I drove out on a Sunday to meet her at a coffee shop. I want you to have the beach house, I told her. She blinked. What? I am going to change the will. You will get it immediately. Her eyes filled with tears, and she covered her mouth. Uncle, I do not know what to say. Just promise me you will fill it with people who appreciate it, I said. And she did. When I came home that afternoon, Laura was waiting for me at the door. She looked tired, really tired, as if all this had aged her in a way she did not expect. Hannah is not perfect, she said softly. But neither are you. I know, I replied, but I never asked for perfection. I asked for basic respect. She did not argue and did not defend herself. She just looked away and nodded, as if even she was beginning to understand that something irreversible had happened. I went to bed early that night, listening to the distant sound of the waves through the window. I thought about legacy, not just the property I was leaving behind, but the emotional legacy I would no longer pretend was love. Maybe forgiveness would come one day, but it would not be forced and even less a performance. 2 months went by before the letter arrived. It arrived on a Tuesday morning, hidden between a credit card statement and a supermarket flyer. The envelope was cream-colored and handwritten. My name traced with that familiar, careful style Hannah always used when she wanted something to be taken seriously. I looked at it for a long time before opening it. The kitchen was quiet. Laura was out with friends, or maybe at the gym. She did not ask anymore. The silence between us had become comfortable, even necessary, like a truce we both respected too much to break. I poured myself a cup of black coffee. I sat down at the kitchen table and opened the envelope slowly, as if it might disintegrate in my hands. The letter was long, 3 pages front and back, not typed. Every word was written in her hand, the ink slightly blurred in places where tears must have fallen. She started by saying she had watched the wedding video over and over again, and that she could finally notice the moment my face changed. She described the guilt that had bloomed in her afterward, how it had become unbearable. She admitted that she had felt ashamed growing up, not because of anything I had done, but because of the way she compared our lives to her friends. She apologized for making me carry the weight of that shame, for confusing material lack with emotional absence. She wrote that she now understood what it meant to work in silence, that while she chased praise, I was building a life that had never let her go hungry, had never let her feel insecure. She said she regretted confusing sacrifice with inadequacy. She repeated it. I am sorry, Dad, I was wrong. There were no demands, no begging for reconciliation, no conditions, just regret in loopy cursive and a quiet acknowledgement of the damage she had caused. I folded the letter carefully and tucked it into the top drawer of the desk where I kept the bills and old tax documents. I did not reply, not because I was angry, not because I did not care, but because I had already answered with my silence, and I had done so with full meaning. I did not need any more apologies. I needed boundaries, and for the first time in my life, I was not willing to cross them, not even for my daughter. Later that week, Laura asked me if I had read the letter. She did it softly, like someone asking if you had already visited a grave. I nodded. It was well written, I said. She did not push. I think she finally realized that my peace had a price and that I was not interested in returning it for a newer and shinier version of what we had had before. She still loved Hannah. I did not stop her from calling her, sending her messages, visiting her, but I made it clear that I was not ready and that I might never be. There are fractures that do not close. They just stop bleeding. The beach house felt different now, brighter in a certain way. I spent more weekends there alone or sometimes with Samantha, who had started setting up the guest room and planting flowers along the driveway. Sometimes she brought friends, nurses, teachers, young people who reminded me of myself before everything got tangled up in resentment and unspoken expectations. They would cook together, put on music too loud, and laugh until midnight. It did not bother me. In fact, it healed something. Seeing someone appreciate what I had built without feeling entitled to it soothed a wound I did not even know was still open. One afternoon, I sat on the porch with a cold beer and watched the sun dip into the ocean. The sky was purple, pink, and gold. The kind of view you only get when the weather is perfect and the air is calm. I thought about the version of me who would have read that letter and run to call her. The father who would have blamed himself, who would have apologized for making her feel ashamed even when he had done everything right. That man no longer existed. I did not hate him. I honored him. He had done his best with what he had, but I could no longer live in his skin. Forgiveness is not always about going back. Sometimes, it is about letting go of illusions, roles, the people who only love you when you are silent. I could forgive myself. Maybe one day I will forgive her. But I will never forget the speech, the laughter, or the way everyone clapped as I walked out of the room in silence, like a man walking out of his own funeral. That memory was mine, and I did not plan on trading it for a Sunday brunch and forced smiles. I drove home late that night, windows down, the ocean air coming in like a cleansing wind. I no longer felt angry, just clear. I had chosen myself, not despite being a father, but because I had been one for so long without ever choosing myself. That was over. I was no longer the man who showed up in silence and was loudly pushed aside. Now, I was the man who had stayed, and then, finally, the man who had left. Comment. Hey everyone, I just wanted to share a few thoughts with you after reading this story. I believe we all deserve to be treated with basic respect, no matter how much we give. Setting healthy boundaries is not selfish. It is necessary for our own peace. Sometimes, walking away is the kindest thing we can do, both for ourselves and for others. I hope this reminds you to value your own worth and never settle for less. Healing starts when we stop carrying what no longer serves us. Take time to reflect on the relationships in your life and ask yourself if they lift you up. Remember that true love includes responsibility from both sides. Choosing peace over endless pain is a powerful act of self-care. I would love to hear what this story meant to you in the comments below. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.